This is a video I've been meaning to get to for a little while. Everybody, well, not everybody, but I've had a lot of people ask me if I could do a video on how to not only get to the servo, but rebuild the servo, remove the servo. For me, it's going to be a little more difficult because my ESC covers my receiver box, so I'm going to have to remove my ESC. There's a lot of wires, sort of bird nest in my receiver box that I'm going to have to clean up. So when you see inside my receiver box, yes, there's going to be a bird nest of wires, but I'm going to clean that up. But let's get started. I'm running the Castle XLX with a 2028 motor. Right now the wires are bare, on top, but after I'm done with everything that I have planned, basically the motors are going to be down, the wires are going to be down up under everything, so the wires aren't showing as much. It's just going to look cleaner. And also I'll have these fans that will be cooling these wires. I have two Much More Racing ultra high RPM 14,000 RPM fans. They move 5 CFM of air each. They've won awards for this fan. But first thing, I made my own mount for my ESC because Kershaw was all out of his. I need to get my phone up front so I can make sure I am getting everything in the shot. Need to adjust the camera a little. Excuse me. Okay, so first thing, of course, is I need to remove my ESC. I made this. It was a quick build. I was in a big hurry to get it running. I have the Kershaw ESC mount ordered, but he is very back ordered because a lot of people are wanting to put different motors in this because the stock ESC from Traxxas sucks. And even with the fusible links are blowing all over the place. I've heard of many different people where their fusible link blew, or either the fusible link blows or their ESC goes up in flames. As you can see, the big ass motor, I don't know how well let's turn on the headlamp. There we go. I like to use that when I'm doing these kind of videos because things are a little dark. That's better. Not a ton, but now you can see the Castle 2028 motor, made in China, max 45,000 RPM, 800 kV. But there you can see my homemade plate. The big difference between the XLX and the XL2 is the XLX actually has cat packs already installed. So the Castle cat packs that you can buy and install on your ESC are already installed on the XLX. So first we need to get to the receiver box to gonna have to unplug the servo, and then I'm going to undo the servo linkage. So it's going to be this screw over here. Some of the things are a little tight to get to, so forgive me if I can't get everything in the shot. Like, these screws are a bear because it really helps to get the screws out completely. Because if you don't, they're going to be fighting the ESC box, the receiver box, from coming out of the way. So you can get to all the plugs, the ESC plugs and everything. So now we just move that forward, and like I said, there is going to be a rat's nest in here. It always moves forward, and then you can lift it up. As you see, there's a rat's nest. I'm going to clean that up before I put everything back together. We want to go to channel 1, which is this one right here. Pull it out. And we also got to remove this cover right here. I'm going to get this out of the way. I've got a lot of wires wired up. I've got the 2028 fans, the much more racing fans, the ESC fan. So a lot of fans to keep things cool. So now we have that done. Now we need to remove this to get to the... A lot of people say that they don't use a drill to... They use a hand tool to start undoing something first, to loosen it up first, and then they will use the drill. But I'm pretty confident with the drill. So now with the servo wire, you just pull it out of the receiver box. Same way, just, I mean, there's basically a little gap. This is what keeps this truck waterproof, the receiver box waterproof. Get that Futaba plug out. I got the fan wire that's holding it up. Okay, so there's the receiver wire that's loose. So now we need, not the receiver, the servo wire. So now we need to undo the servo linkage, which is a 2mm bit. I should probably tilt the camera down a little. It's a little hard to get all this stuff done at the same time, having the headlamp to give a light. So I'm going to put this up here. So I'll get some better light maybe. Actually, I think my headlamp is dead. Yeah. So sorry if it's a little dark. I'll flip the truck over when it comes to actually getting to the I'm actually having to do this video with my GoPro plugged in. So now we're just going to take, oh shit, need the bit. Now I'm just going to take this screw out right here. So probably a little dark, but it's basically the linkage that goes from the servo horn to the bell crank. And now that'll have the servo, yeah, the servo completely freed up. And now we have to basically start disassembling the front end, which starts with these bolts right here. I'm just going to go through this because I already have a video on how to get to your receiver, but not on how to rebuild your receiver. I'm sorry, I didn't sleep last night. It is 6:14. And I've been up all night. I didn't sleep. So please forgive me if I use the wrong terminology. It's been a rough night. Hate it when I can't sleep. But you get the 4 main screws out that holds that in. And then you have the other two screws here. That come out. those two. And if I can remember right, gotta get to the bottom side and remove the entire lower skid plate. People that have watched my previous video, I did strip out one of the screws because it was in a very awkward place, and like I said earlier, a lot of people prefer to use a tool first to loosen it, then the drill. I went with the drill first and I stripped it, so I turned it into a flathead with a Dremel. I just cut a flathead into it. I just cut a slot into it, and that turned it into a flathead. That's the flathead right there. But as long as you make sure it's seated in very well first and then start, it won't strip it out. The problem that I screwed up is I didn't have it seated very well, and it stripped out the top, which with these Allen head screws, once you strip out one part, you've pretty much stripped out all of it, because the Allen key really won't be able to grab a hold. And now I've got to use a flathead. Dig around in my bag for the right parts. I mean, it's pretty easy to remember what screws go where. Oh, damn it. I wasn't supposed to put you in there. This flathead screw, I actually have to, once I get it completely taken apart, I will flip the truck upside down. This flathead's going to be a problem, I can already tell. Nope, there it goes. Well, this is why they don't use flatheads on RC vehicles. They use Phillips on the very cheap ones, and that's the sign of a cheaply made RC vehicle. My shit, I can't even remember the name of it. Oh yeah, my Exceed RC Drift Star has Phillips head screws, and that's, like I said, it's a cheap RC vehicle. So, okay, what am I forgetting? Oh yeah, duh. You got to get these side screws out, that the inner cage. Where'd my bit go? There it is. And I'm just gonna take it apart, and then I'm not gonna do the assembly on camera. I'm just showing how to get to it and rebuild it, and the proper way to rebuild a servo, so you don't, I'll go over that once we get to the servo itself. I will actually go over that stuff, things you're going to want to do to make sure that the servo horn goes back in the right place. What am I forgetting? I'm tired. My brain isn't working 100%. No, I won't forget anything. There it goes. So as you see, the bottom plate came off. The front section just came. It's just sort of, it's keyed into place, and a lot of people are curious about the drive shaft. I've seen them spun and all kind of things, rifled, sort of. The drive shaft is a hollow piece of aluminum. I've seen them twisted and split at one end, and especially when you're working with 2028 power, that's going to happen. So now we are going to flip the truck over completely so we can actually see the servo. This is your servo. Andrew Natal, I believe that's how his name is pronounced, actually did a video of how to mount a 5th scale servo, and now that I actually look at it, it doesn't look all that hard, but still a very big job. So now you're going to want to use 2.5. Take the 3 screws out that holds the servo in place, and then the servo will just pop out just like that. And if you've already got your wires loose, there's your servo. Now to rebuild it, first thing you're gonna have to do is, I don't know what this is. I haven't rebuilt this servo yet, but I knew I needed to, so that's why I decided to get it on film. But yes, this is the servo that goes in it. It's bigger than a regular servo, but not as big as a 5th scale. So I'm going to need basically a jeweler's Phillips head screwdriver. And I don't know which Allen wrench yet. Definitely not that one. So it's going to be one of the smaller ones. Yes, I have a lot of Allen wrenches. Okay, now, before you take this off, make sure you remember that it's straight up and down. Because if you move it to the left or the right and you don't get it positioned 100% properly when you put it back on, you're going to have more steering to the left than the right, or more to the right than the left. This is a digital waterproof servo. So you're going to want to take a 2mm Allen wrench, unscrew the screw that goes into the I can't remember the name of that. Basically the part that the servo horn connects to. That just unscrews, and then the servo horn will pop off just like that. And remember, it goes up like this. So I'm going to remember that the wire is on the right side. So with the wire on the right side and the 2085 on the left, it goes straight up. So put that stuff off to the side, and now you can start disassembling the servo itself. I'm going to use, I have a lot of tiny little screwdriver bits with all my RC stuff, so that's what I'm going to utilize. So you just take this. There's 2 top screws and 6 bottom screws, but I don't know. I believe you have to take all of them out to get to the entire servo, but just the top one to get to the gears. If you strip out the gears, I've heard of people stripping out the gears because rocks get inside the chassis. And another thing, be careful with this, because if you spin it and then you go to put the servo horn back on, it's not going to be aligned, so be very careful that you don't spin it. Yeah, okay. Gotta do all the screws. There's 8 screws altogether. There's 2 at the top, 6 at the bottom. And there's actually a, where the motor and all the actuators are, there's actually a piece of aluminum to dissipate all the heat. Remember where all your screws go, because if you put a short screw where a long screw goes, it may not have enough threads to really thread in well. But the long ones usually go to the outside, and then the short ones go in the center. You have with this you have 2 short ones, 2 medium ones, and 2 long screws. So these will also be long. And the bottom plate just comes right off, and there is your has basically a computer board, and then the top will just slide right off. Oh crap. Oh, okay. So that is going to go back in there like that. I hate it when they have shit like this. But this is the inside of your servo. You have a ball bearing at the top to keep for all the torque and the top. All the gears are plastic. If they were to come out with some metal gears and a stronger... Damn it. Oh great, the waterproof seal came off. Oh, that just goes around it. Need to look at something right quick. Don't want parts to come off because I don't need to rebuild mine. Actually, I need to take this pin. No, that pin doesn't come out. Yeah, it does. There it comes. So I just want to make sure that everything goes back together. Yeah, that seal that came off just goes over everything. And this piece of metal will also slide off so you can see the entire interior of the servo. And there's the entire servo. You have a sensor over here, and then you have the motor over here. If they come out with a better motor, that will really help. And some metal gears. Those 2 things will really help with this servo. So now assemble it back together. It's a snug fit. I will say that. Traxxas, with this servo, Traxxas basically made a brand new. There's a lot of servo grease on it in this servo. Damn. We'll say one thing, the way they build it makes it seem like they really don't want you to get inside of it. And everything just pops right back on. And then you'll take that gear that likes to continue to come off. Turn it around. That's basically an idler gear. So all that goes there, and then we're going to take this waterproof seal, put it back around it. I'm pretty sure it stretches, but don't stretch it too far, because if you stretch it too far, it's going to break. Get it around everything first, and then get everything seated in place. This is a butt of a servo to work on. So unless you have to, I would strongly suggest don't rebuild this. So that seals back in place. Now we're going to take the cap, put it back on. So everything's back on the way it should be. And now we're going to take the bottom, which lines up like that. We've got to get that rubber grommet in place. And that screw will go ahead and start everything. And it'll pretty much just squeeze that rubber grommet together, and then you can put your screws back in. The only reason I would see that you would need to do this to your servo is if you possibly stripped it out. Oh yeah, the medium screws go. Medium screws go on the other side. The thin screws go right here. So make sure you're holding everything together with a decent amount of pressure. Get the screw started. And with something with this many screws, you're going to want to sort of start from the center and work your way out when it comes to tightening it. But I would highly suggest don't take it apart completely unless you have... I've never done it before. This is my first time. So, like a lot of my videos, you learned with me. So now we're just putting the servo back together. And now we're going to work from the center outwards. It popped into place, so that means it's getting a good seal. Yep. And then sort of go diagonal with these. These long screws are what really hold the servo together. I mean, I'm sorry that wasn't really in the picture frame. But these, I'm actually going against my own advice. These long screws actually are a little snug, so a jeweler's screwdriver may be a little too small. And definitely don't use a drill on screws this small, because you can mess up the threads very quickly. Or, seeing that these screws are so small, you could possibly snap a screw. And then just put the top screws back in, and we are done with the servo. We just got to run the wire back through, Put the servo horn back on. Yeah, I really don't like this servo. I will say that, because it's just, it doesn't really feel like it's built all that well. So now I'm going to take the servo horn, put it back on straight up. It moved a little while I had everything apart, but I've done a lot of servos. I can take the servo horn back off, get it lined back up correctly, or I can just use my trim to get it right. Put the servo horn back on, tighten up the screw. You want to get that screw nice and tight, and then push the wire back through all the way. Push the servo back in till it's seated. Take your instrument of choice. Mine is a drill, and I set the clutch to the and I am not tightening it down all the way. I'm just getting it started. And then as soon as I feel even the slightest amount of friction, I stop, so I do not strip anything out. So now I'm going to take my screwdriver and hand tighten this. And that, everybody, is how you get to your servo and how you rebuild it. I will say a couple things. I believe it was the top, the ring, the waterproof seal ring. If that comes off, that's a bit of a bear to get back on. Make sure you try your best to keep everything lined up within the servo, because if anything's off when you put it back together, battery just got done charging from the X-MAXX. That's what that was. But before I even put everything back together, I'm going to plug in my batteries and plug everything back into the receiver, and make sure I have the same amount of throw on the servo both directions, because you want everything to be equal, so you'll have same amount of turning left and right. So that's that video. Like usual, if you want a video done, comment, request. I'm in every X-MAXX Facebook group except for the foreign ones. You got X-MAXX Italia. I'm in X-MAXX Modified, X-MAXX Castle 2028 X-MAXX, because I do have the 2028 in my X-MAXX. So, hope that helps. 35-minute video. I'm sorry about the lengths of these videos, but I don't like to fast forward them, because I like to do it so people can follow along. Because, I mean, if I was going at if I was fast forwarding things, people would have to pause and all that stuff. But, yeah, I'm not going to explain all that. I'm just going to say peace, like usual, and happy bashing.